Welcome, my friends, to another YouTube version of the BjjBrick Podcast. I hope you enjoy the show, and if you do, please subscribe to the channel. So here we go.
Thank you for listening to the BjjBrick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BjjBrick Podcast. This is episode 223. My name is Byron. I'm here with my buddies Gary and Joe. We're also known as the Three Shades of Gray for the BJJ podcasting community. We're all getting a little older and possibly a little grayer. Gary, Joe, how you guys doing?
Well, I'm just getting a little older and grayer.
So 3 shades of gray. Is that gray? Is that like 50 shades of gray, but not quite?
A lot less.
Well, that is Byron's favorite movie.
Oh, man.
I thought he wrote the book.
Yeah.
I figure we're all a little older than the average grapplers out there, and that worked out okay for the analogies go. I thought Gary would come back and say doesn't have any gray.
Oh, I do, Byron.
Okay.
I do.
Just not where I
keep my hair cut. I keep my hair cut short enough it's not too noticeable, but yeah, it's pretty gray by now.
So, but that's not such a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing. We're wiser, is what I like to say. We're seasoned.
Seasoned. That's a good one.
A little bit of salt and pepper in the seasoning.
Yeah. Byron likes to say I'm not a grappler anymore. I'm a crappler. That's what he tells me.
That just happened a couple of times, and we got that all cleaned up.
We can turn it into a mat tail.
Gary, that's not a bad idea. This week on the podcast, we have an interview with Rich Byrne. Rich Byrne is a black belt in BJJ, the former CEO of Deutsche Bank Securities, and now he has a jiu-jitsu promotion called KASAI. It's an 8-man tournament with some of the best action in the jiu-jitsu world. We have a lot to talk about with Rich today. I know you'll enjoy it. Then, as I made a couple of audiobooks, one of them is your first year of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If you are in that first year of Jiu-Jitsu, or even thinking about starting in Jiu-Jitsu, this is an audiobook that will really help you out. It will walk you into the gym, help you learn what to expect, get you through the first month, get to the first year. If you're interested in competing, I cover that as well. It's basically similar to a podcast, except for it's a lot more thought out, I would say. And it is really designed to get you through that first year with success and feeling good about it and getting the most out of that and really getting off to a good start. And that's really the goal with the audiobook. I've had a lot of good feedback from it. It's $11.99. It's about 2.5 hours long. And if you're in that market, I really do think it would help you out. It means a lot to us. It does help the show out. It helps us keep going, build this wall a little bit stronger.
Definitely, and it will definitely help your jiu-jitsu journey. So check it out, guys. Hey, Byron.
Yes.
You're a smart guy.
Oh, boy.
What?
No.
Here comes
not
something
at
I'm
all.
going to fail at.
What does jiu-jitsu and hanging sheetrock have in common?
My first response is they're both... you need more than one person, maybe?
You don't know?
Can't hang sheetrock by myself.
You don't know?
I don't have anything other than I need more than one person.
Damn, I don't know either. I was hoping you'd have an answer for me. I'm just kidding. How about the off the mat lesson that relates to jiu-jitsu? So my wife and I are hanging sheetrock, and I'm new to it. My wife's new to it, and actually putting the sheetrock on the wall is pretty easy.
Yeah.
But the mud and the tape to hide all the seams and all the imperfections, it's a long process, and you got to buy the right tools. And you got to put the first little bit of mud in and then let it dry, and then another layer, and then another layer with a different tool, and then another layer, and then you got to sand it and maybe go back and touch some things up. And when you get the final coat of paint on, nobody has any idea how much time and work you had to put into it to get it to look right. And certainly you could take shortcuts, but it would show in the end. And I think this relates to jiu-jitsu because we see guys that have really pretty grappling and they're fluid and they're smooth. And it's easy sometimes to say, man, I wish I was blessed with that kind of athleticism or that kind of agility or whatever. We sometimes write it off as this person's just fortunate that they have these attributes. But the reality is there's hours and hours and hours of rolling and drilling and shrimping and all these base movements that the end result is pretty jiu-jitsu. What do you think about that?
That's a good way to look at it. I thought you'd go somewhere else with it, but you took it in a very good way, because you do look at a wall and you really don't even notice a wall. There it is. It's painted. It's fine. It's good to go. But same thing with jiu-jitsu. Man, that was a cool technique. But there's so much behind the technique as far as all the training to make that work, the timing to make it happen, and the knowledge to when to execute, or even if this was the right thing to do. A lot behind the walls of jiu-jitsu. For me, I recently moved a piece of furniture without the help of my wife because she was at work, and I damaged the wall. This was like 2 weeks ago. I put a little bit of that mud stuff on there, sanded it, tried it, sanded it some more, took the paint back, got it shaken up. You know, this is like 10-year-old paint. And you could see where I have repaired the wall. Not as obvious as the hole in the wall, but it was not perfect. My sheetrocking skill is not that good. But
Byron,
yeah.
Last week I was telling you, when, trying to give you some advice on how to get out of the 5K race that your wife had you do. What you were supposed to do here is when you moved it without her help and put the hole in the wall, you just moved the couch where you wanted it to be, and then put a new picture up over that hole. You don't even have to fix it, Byron.
Man. Here, this would be great, except for the hole was like 2 feet off the ground and by the front door. Kind of out of place for the couch.
You just put one down there and tell her that's the new style.
That's how we're rolling with it.
Yep. Yeah.
Man, this is a good team we have here. All elements are covered. We have, repairing the wall, or actually just building the wall and making it look perfect is what Joe's doing. I repair the wall and make it look hopefully passable for someday if we sell the house. And Gary covers it up with some debris or a picture he found that will until somebody moves it.
Yeah,
well, there's another option with the wife, Byron. You do a horrible job patching the hole, and then every time she asks you to move furniture, you say, "Remember what happened last time?"
Man,
and think about that, because while she's asking other people to come over on a Saturday afternoon and do it, you can spend more time rolling. I mean, Joe just gave you the best idea ever.
Man, this is really becoming the Help Byron with His Marriage podcast, and I'm so grateful, guys. This is great.
Yeah, we'll always help you out. We want your Becky to be happy with everything you're doing. So we got your back, Byron. Literally.
Thank you.
Yep. Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they cannot lose. That's a quote this week from Bill Gates. I assume everybody knows who Bill Gates is, the founder of Apple there. But Byron, do you think success is a lousy teacher?
Bill Gates founded Apple?
Or Microsoft.
Oh, man. Jeez, Microsoft. Yeah, sorry.
Same thing.
Yeah, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, they're all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, ultimately, success isn't the best teacher. I think it says a lot. It may be a more enjoyable teacher, and you can learn from successes. But when you see a champion or somebody who's very successful, you always wonder: are they resting on their laurels? Do they assume that they have it this time? Are they, boxing with their hands down too low, then get caught, or are they not training as hard as they did to get here? And that's always something that when you look at a champion, you kind of have to question: is that happening to them? Because when that starts to happen, they might win a fight or two, or they might, depending on, not everything's a fight, obviously, but they might continue to have success for a little while. But ultimately, there's a bunch of people, there's a bunch of competition out there in the world that are hungry for that position or that spot. And that's what they want you to do, is to relax and to think that you're the best.
And I'm thinking from Bill Gates' world. He's talking about success as a lousy teacher, and the companies that really do great year in, year out. They're never resting on their laurels. They're trying to find the next new product, the next new technology, investing in that, investing into research and development, and, becoming the forefront. And, they're never just saying, hey, we had a great year, let's all pat ourselves on the back and go to the Bahamas. They're, thinking of the next big thing that's going to, be an incredible product.
And Gary, I'm guessing that's because they have had some failures.
Yeah, definitely.
So they've already learned this lesson.
Yes, yep. I think you have to have failures. I mean, failures, is what teaches you. If everything's so easy that if we just go down that path and everything just falls right in front of us, it's, you don't have the, how do I say it? The feeling that you just worked hard to get it. Everything just fell there. You have to have failures. You have to pick yourself back up. You have to learn from those. Every time it doesn't go your way, let's sit down. Let's game plan. What went right? What went wrong? What do we need to do to get to our goal? And strategize and come up with a new plan.
Yeah.
I've got a couple siblings that struggled their first year in college because high school is so easy for them. My older sister, my older brother, they breezed through high school, and then they got to college, and it's a whole different world. And learning how to struggle and learning how to work for success is really important.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at Bill Gates a little bit in his career. Before Microsoft, there was a company that he was co-running named Traft Data. It failed. I mean, it was a failure. He took that and he went on and moved towards Microsoft. And Bill Gates also talks about Google just kicked their butts as far as search goes. That they had their MSN search or whatever it was called, but they had no idea what the success Google would have by providing quality search to people that were looking for, it could be anything, and their algorithms. And they were successful. They had Microsoft. They had this going on. They weren't looking forward to the future. Hungry young Google, 1998, launched is when Google was launched, and they got after it. They changed things. So it happens to everybody. You can't. It's hard to remain on the top forever, but it is important to acknowledge that your failures are not like the end of everything, and try to learn from them and be grateful for the opportunity to try again.
Well said, Byron. I think it's time to get on to our interview with Rich Byrne, who is another very successful businessman and also trains jiu-jitsu. So let's get on with the interview.
I'm going to say that Rich would probably wipe the floor with Bill Gates.
Definitely. I think so.
On the mat.
I think
that, yeah.
I think he'd wipe the floor with most of us.
We'll see if we can arrange that in their next big KASAI grappling championship. That would be cool. Bill Gates versus Rich Byrne. Man, that'd be huge. Not that exciting, but it would be fun. Here we go. Here's the interview. He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
I tapped out Robin Hood with a bow and arrow choke. The impressive thing is that Robin Hood didn't even have a gi. Just his tights. The Navy has studied my rib cage. They have made many advances to submarine technology, learning how to easily withstand great pressure. According to superstition, stand in front of a mirror and say my name 3 times, you will start coughing, just like after a tight choke.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BjjBrick Podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm here with Rich Byrne. Rich, I'm really happy to get you on the show. You've got a lot going on. A black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You're also have started KASAI Elite Grappling Championships. A lot to talk about today. Rich, welcome to the BjjBrick Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Byron.
If somebody hasn't heard of you yet, just give us a little description on the mat, off the mat, wherever you want to go, of who you are and what you're up to.
Sure, thanks. I'm the most atypical jiu-jitsu guy you'll find. I'm 56 years old. I've been a banker all my life, work in New York. I run my own asset management firm these days, pretty high-stress, high-time demand job. But about 12 years ago, I found jiu-jitsu in my life. And other than my family, it's probably where I spend the most time away from work. And it is something that truly has changed my life in so many ways. So hopefully we'll get to some of that as you ask me more questions.
Yeah. So how old were you when you started jiu-jitsu?
Well, I'm 56 now. It was 12 years ago. So if it's good, I'm decent at math. So. Yeah, so like 48 or something like that. Okay. I'm sorry, I failed the math test. 44 or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So here you are in the financial industry, 44 years old or so, and you decided to start jiu-jitsu. What was the reason for that? What was the drive?
Well, I have a really cool story, and I'll try to tell it quick enough so I don't bore all the listeners here. But so I've been a runner all my life. I've always been very big into fitness. I ran in high school, ran a bunch of marathons. It was sort of my sport. It was definitely not any martial arts or combat or anything like that. And I had a labral tear in my hip, and doctors told me I really couldn't run anymore. If I did, I'd really have to pare it down, and I was going crazy. And one of my clients, you may recognize the name, for many, many years, with two guys named Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta, obviously of UFC fame. But they were my client because they owned a casino company out in Las Vegas. And we were working on a big transaction with them, and I was all depressed because I couldn't run. And they said, "Hey, Rich, you should try martial arts. You should try kickboxing." And I said, "Well, what do you know about kickboxing?" They said, "Well, we just bought this company, literally just bought this company called UFC." I didn't even know what UFC was. And I started watching it, after they told me this, and I was fascinated. And they set me up for a kickboxing lesson in New York. I loved it. And eventually that led to setting me up for a jiu-jitsu lesson with Renzo Gracie, by the way. I went in the deep end on the first day. I did a private with Renzo. Ultimately fell in love. And so I have the Fertittas to thank for my entree to jiu-jitsu. That's how I found it.
Looking back, it's interesting they recommended the kickboxing over jiu-jitsu first.
Yeah, well, that's funny you say that because maybe we'll get to it as we talk about the podcast, but I own a gym in New York. We do three things at the gym. We do CrossFit, kickboxing or striking, we call it, and submission grappling or jiu-jitsu. And when we started the gym, it's, I think, 6-7 years old now, we had almost all of our members, let's say 80% of the members did CrossFit, maybe 20 did kickboxing, and maybe there were 3 of us that did jiu-jitsu. And you fast forward that, let's say 7 years later, and 80% of the members are jiu-jitsu. So I view it as this, the answer to what you just said is this. I think in our case of our gym, I think CrossFit is a gateway drug. And once you get in there, I mean, that's an easy one to say yes to. The next easiest one to say yes to when you start feeling adventurous and you get bored of doing push-ups and things is, let me put on the gloves and hit those pads. That looks like fun. And then when you get past that gateway, the ultimate one where you see people get addicted is when they're brave enough to try jiu-jitsu. Once they go jiu-jitsu, they never seem to come back. So, yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me, to see if I was serious about this to start me off with kickboxing.
That's interesting. It just, now that I know jiu-jitsu and I'm comfortable with it, the idea of doing kickboxing sounds way more intimidating, getting hit and all this sort of thing.
It depends. I mean, but no, yeah, yes and no. I mean, think about, I don't know, down by you, but in New York, I mean, there are so many of these boutique fitness. It's sort of the new big thing. I'm sure it's true for most of the country, but there are these boot camps and things, and a lot of them are just hitting pads or hitting a bag.
Okay.
And, so it's not actually somebody hitting back most of the time. So I think the stigma of kickboxing is maybe it's not like getting thrown into the deep end in Thailand in a Muay Thai place where you're getting hit with bamboo sticks in your shins. I think it's a little bit more mainstream. I think than it's less a stigma than maybe going straight to jiu-jitsu.
Okay, Rich, you seem to have kind of a lot of things going on here. You're the CEO of KASAI, the new grappling promotion. You work in the financial industry. You evidently also own a gym. Is that kind of the business end of what you got going on?
Well, yeah. I mean,
that seems like a lot.
Yeah, I would describe it in reverse. I would say I spend a lot of hours every day, in the financial markets, trying to run a business. I run an asset management firm. It's called Benefit Street Partners, and we have about $25 billion of assets under management, and we're pretty hard at work here. What I do to really have fun and relieve stress, and really make add some real quality to my life, in addition to all that I get out of my day job, is a lot of that jiu-jitsu related stuff. For sure.
Take me through like a typical day, Rich. I really can't understand how I can't relate to somebody who has like a position that you have and the stresses and that sort of thing, and then you get to jiu-jitsu as well. Can you take me through like a typical day that you have? I think
yeah, sure. I'd love to. I usually get to the office by around 8:30. So that gives me a window, right, to work out. That's early morning. Early bird gets the worm. I teach the morning class in my gym. When you're the owner of the gym, you can kind of do whatever you want, right? So, plus, I used to have the other instructors teach the morning class. This is when I was a lower belt, and it was a little challenging because they'd wake up at 6 a.m. and then they'd be all grumpy the rest of the day. So, and I used to go to the 6 a.m. class with one of our instructors. I won't say who, but I remember he was yelling at a student who was literally there like his second time ever for a jiu-jitsu lesson that he didn't know what an inside senkaku was. And I took him aside and I said, I think you're a little cranky. This guy doesn't even know how to tie his belt yet. I'm not sure. I think so. I figured I'm the one who's most likely to be awake and alert in the morning. So I took over the duties once I got, I think, to brown belt of teaching the morning class, and I've done it ever since. So I teach a 6 a.m. class Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I also teach on Sundays when the gym's otherwise closed. So I start off the day, and then usually on Tuesday and Thursday, if I'm in town, I usually recruit somebody or another to come train with me in the morning. So pretty much 4 or 5 days a week, if I'm in town, I train, before I get to work at about 8:30 in the morning. When I can get out of work by 6:30 or 7, I will try to make our evening class. We have 6:30 evening classes. Even if I miss the class, a bunch of guys will stay later and roll. And I'll get to do that. So I get maybe a couple times a week. I get a twofer. Get to train twice. But that ignores, the traveling. I do some extensive traveling, and you can view life as I think you view that as a negative to your training world or an opportunity. And I've tried to make it an opportunity. Whereas anywhere I go in the country, especially if it's a multi-day trip, I try to work into my schedule a visit to a dojo somewhere to go to a class or a private or whatever time permits, and train. And I have built up a resume over the last 10 or so years through my travels of training in literally hundreds of places and meeting hundreds of different people and, big names and small names. And boy, has that been fun.
Yeah, I like how you've taken what some people would view as a disadvantage of traveling away from their gym and turned it into an advantage of getting to meet new people and train with a lot of different faces.
For sure. And, it's like, I'll give you an example. We do a lot of business in the Middle East. And we have some of our biggest limited partners in the Middle East. And when I'm in Abu Dhabi, I was fortunate enough to be introduced to the Sheikh in Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Tahnoon bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who's basically the brother of the ruler of the country. He's one of the top 2 or 3 people in the entire Emirates. And he's the same sheikh that founded the ADCC and basically is one of the forefathers of putting jiu-jitsu on the map in its current form. And when I'm in Abu Dhabi, I'll notify the sheikh in advance, or His Highness, and if I'm lucky and he's around, which usually is, so after I finish my last meeting or have dinner or something around 8, 9 o'clock, I'll get picked up in a SUV and get whisked over to his palace, and we do like a midnight training session. I've done half a dozen of those over the years, and it's definitely a neat thing when I show up at the next morning meeting and they say, "Hey, what'd you do last night?" And I said, and I'll say something like, "Yeah, you wouldn't believe it if I told you."
Wow.
Right.
That's incredible.
That's a little sexier one, maybe, but you name it. I mean, if I'm in London, I go to Hodgers or Gracie Baja, or if I'm in California, if I could make it out to, depends on where I am. In California, I view that as one of the capitals of the world of jiu-jitsu, either to Sean Williams' place or to Cobrinha or to Rafa Mendes or to Jean-Jacques. I mean, boy, life's good when you get to train with people like that.
Yeah, it's a lot of opportunity. So how does this affect your training, going to different places? Are you just constantly picking up new stuff, or are you just fine-tuning your game with different people evaluating it and helping you out?
Yeah, good question. I guess it depends if you go through a class, or I always love the opportunity to train with new people in a class context because, jiu-jitsu, I'll quote the famous John Danaher, who's really my earliest mentor in the sport, who just views jiu-jitsu as a series of, problem solving. And, every time somebody you've never sparred with before gets put in front of you, you kind of need to figure things out on the fly. And it's a really important skill, which I hope to get really good at over time. But, I think the more reps you take at it. So, in other words, training with the same 6 guys every day, you kind of know what they're going to do. It's like figuring out the puzzle of, different bodies. So I love that. Especially different schools, they all tend to have different approaches to how they do the sport. But where I get to do privates, and often I'll do privates a lot on my travels because, I need to train at 6, 7 a.m., and I pray that I can convince somebody to get up and train, with me on these shoulder time periods when because it's the only time I'm really free. And so if I get to train with somebody who's, a noteworthy or just a serious black belt instructor at a gym, I'll start that lesson with, 9 times out of 10, it'll start when they'll say, "Hey, what do you want to work on?" And my answer will always be, "What do you do well? What's your go-to?" Or, if I know who it is and, I've watched their matches, I'll know exactly the answer to the question, and I'll say, "Hey, can we work on this?" Yeah, I to me, it's a constant exploration. That's what's so cool about jiu-jitsu. There's no magic buttons or anything, but boy, it's nice to get different perspectives and different approaches.
Yeah, and I always like to get people to show what they do well. It's you see them kind of light up, and they get excited, and they have that passion. I think that's contagious right onto the student, which would be you. And it's so much easier to learn something when somebody, you could tell they're 100% behind what they're saying, and they're showing you one of their best things. That's always a
right.
good, I like that.
Like like for example, I was in Costa Mesa, and I got to Art of Jiu-Jitsu, and I was fortunate enough to get a private lesson with Rafa Mendez. And he said, "What do you want to work on?" And I was, I watched a whole bunch of his tapes recently, some of his old matches. And I said, that twister hook you do is really cool. Can we do twister hook? And he showed me, I don't know, like 10 different entrances to a twister hook, which I just thought was really cool. I kind of knew him, but, until, to hear sort of the way he approached it. And then we rolled, and he took my back with a twister hook about 20 times in a row. What else could I say? And I was actually trying not to be caught. Like, I was literally trying to do anything other than be caught in a twister hook. When you learn from people like that, you tend to, not only do you get them excited, I get excited.
Yeah, and I think that's a good lesson for anybody that's traveling or even just with your own coach. If they want to know what you want, they ask you, what do you want to learn today? And just, if it's something that they do well, or just say, what do you like to do? Which one of your favorite techniques? And you're going to get a great lesson, really, no matter who's in front of you. Also, if it's one of the best in the world, that's going to be an amazing experience as well. Rich, right. I want to get to talking about KASAI here. Tell me a little bit how that started. What was the drive behind it?
So I've been, as you've heard, doing jiu-jitsu for a while. I love the sport, and I just feel like I've always felt this way, that, this is such a explosively growing sport. Think of how much, when I described my travels 10 years ago, there wasn't always a place you can go to because, there are some cities and towns where they just don't have a dojo or something. And you travel today, you can go to the Google and you'll find like 3 choices in literally the most obscure cities in the country. I guess that's my way of saying that it's a rapidly growing sport. But at the pro level, I just don't think we ever evolved to the place where jiu-jitsu appeals to people outside people who do jiu-jitsu, which, as much as that's grown, is still a relatively limited base. Think of the UFC. I'm sure 95% of the people in those chairs don't do mixed martial arts. I'm probably light. Probably like 99% don't do mixed martial arts. Because it's very easy to understand fighting, right? You put 2 people in a cage. Not many people in the UFC, not many people need to say, "Oh, tell me the rules." Becomes pretty obvious. One guy's trying to punch and kick and submit the guy, and the other guy's trying to do the same. Where jiu-jitsu's not that much more complicated to understand. It's just sometimes with the rules and the way advantages work, and it's not necessarily obvious to people that don't do jiu-jitsu. There's a lot of slow periods. There's a lot of arbitrariness to the scoring. If you watch a big IBJJF or even ADCC tournament, you see multiple mats. You're not sure which mat to look at. So that's my long wind-up in a way to say that I think it could be I've always thought it could be done better, to bring jiu-jitsu with a set of rules and a format that's just super exciting, and you take anybody off the street and you sit them down, you say, "I never watched a jiu-jitsu match in my life," and you can thoroughly entertain them without you having to do a tutorial for them on, how does the sport work or anything. So that's my wind-up, and to say, I think that's been the goal in mind for about 6 or 7 years, because I've always wanted to start my own promotion, to showcase the sport in a different light, in a more exciting light, in a, just maximizing the entertainment value, and to showcase some of the best athletes in the world. And that's what I think we came up with KASAI. I hope we have. We've had our first tournament. It was in December, our pro tournament. We also have an amateur tournament, which we had about a month and a half before that. And first of all, it's a tournament. It's not just a series of random super fights. It's a real tournament. The matches are only 6 minutes long, so there's not a lot of places to hide. You're allowed to have a tie at the end of the match, so you don't have these artificial, tiebreaker, situations. and it's just pure excitement. And the last tournament we had was at 155 pounds. We also had a couple of super fights. I think it's a winning formula, and can't wait to do it again. And lastly, it was, we're based in New York, and a lot of the other promotions out there just, are either out West Coast or in London or, elsewhere. And there's so much good talent in New York, and it's just too expensive sometimes for people to fly these guys out to some of these other venues. And there's so many rivalries, and there's so many, there's Unity, Marcelo Garcia, Shaolin, Renzo Gracie. The rivalries alone between the gyms is sort of a cool concept. So sorry for the long answer, but really excited about what we've come up with.
I want to get a little bit deeper into the idea of getting somebody who doesn't train jiu-jitsu to watch and be entertained by the matches that are happening at KASAI Pro. What are some of the things you have to do to make that happen?
That's a good question. So this is a control experiment. I feel like we had laboratory rats for this one. Look, we had a really cool arena in Brooklyn. It held about 550 people. And I guess because I own the company, I took about 50 seats, and I literally gave 50 seats to people that I know. Some are people I train with, but about, let's say 30 to 35 of those people were people that really never watched jiu-jitsu, probably don't even really know what it is other than they know that I do it. And it was a controlled experiment. I put them in there. I didn't give them any education or anything. I just asked them to come and tell me what they think and have a good time. Several of them brought their kids. A couple of kids were wrestlers, maybe, so they kind of understood that. We put the rules up in the beginning of the matches, just on a slide. The announcers were announcing for the flow grappling broadcast. They weren't announcing to the crowd. So nobody in the crowd had really any background other than to understand, if they just read a little bit about, all submissions legal, point system, 6-minute rounds, 2 brackets, everybody in the bracket fights each other, the winners of each bracket fight for the finals, fight for the gold. That was it. Those are the instructions. But what really happened was we did what I think good production value shows and broadcasts do, which, as you know, a lot of the jiu-jitsu promotions out there, they're running on very low budgets, and they don't do a lot of this. We spent the money and spent the time and took every single competitor in that tournament, and we sat them down for an hour and asked them questions in front of a camera. And we came up with sort of an up-close and personal for each guy of a couple of minutes. Tell me about your life, tell me this, that, the other thing. Sort of got a sense of their personalities. So we introduced these guys in the beginning. We walk them out in the mat. We run a video before each one of them fights with, so people can get to kind of know them a little bit. So now all of a sudden the people that they're seeing have like personalities. Sure, if you're a jiu-jitsu fan, everybody knows who Gary Tonin is. He's a rock star. He's in the tournament, but they didn't know who Canudo was, who ended up winning the tournament. And people started pulling for him, maybe because they liked something about his background or the way he talked. So I think a lot of it is just connecting people. It's not just some random guys out there and there's 8 mats and, oh, look at this mat. This mat looks cool. This is about these are real people. And by the way, every one of those 35 people, I know, and a lot of them were just being nice and telling me what I wanted to hear, that it was great. But virtually every one of them stayed till the last minute of the last match, which, by the way, we ended past our curfew. It ran long and ran till midnight. And if they didn't go to the undercard, they got there at 8, and a lot of them got there for the undercard, which started at 6:30. So that's 5.5 hours sitting in their seat. And they weren't doing that just to be polite. They did it because they liked it. They kind of got connected to the spectacle and to the storyline. So I think it's a little about that. I think it's a little about showmanship. It's not just so much, because the talent is undisputed. These are some of the best athletes in the world. This is about putting them in a production that really can tell a story. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think of all the things I get caught watching, And, why am I watching curling on the Olympics? That's just so boring. But then they'll tell you a story about how the guy's, been training and his family and, difficulties or whatever. And suddenly I care about this incredibly lame thing of pushing a thing on ice. Like, I should not care about that at all. I've never done that. I don't care. I'm not going to do that. But suddenly I like this guy and I want him to win. And I think that, like, telling that story, showing them who they are behind that. I think looking at UFC, that The Ultimate Fighter lets you see a little bit more of a glimpse of who the people are before they step into the cage and get a connection with that person, and that does help grow that as well. And it's I think the other advantage that you weren't really able to play on in the actual arena is the commentary. If somebody is talking and explaining what's happening, what the person's trying to do, or what the person is trying to avoid, even if you don't know, if the guy's like, okay, well, if he could move this arm across his stomach, he's going to try to take his back, or if he could, get his head's almost going to pop out. It's just basically make or break you right here. It makes it a lot easier for the uneducated to enjoy a good match. Even the educated, when you have somebody who's a good commentator, it becomes way more interesting because you're noticing things you wouldn't have caught necessarily. Okay, this is cool. Or just hearing some statistics of these two have grappled before. It's gone, they're 4-6 the previous matches, and who's kind of the underdog or who. All that stuff could helps people who don't understand jiu-jitsu get into it and enjoy what they're watching.
I think that's right. I think Joe Rogan does that, for the UFC. I think maybe that's part of the success. I agree with you. The Ultimate Fighter show is exactly that. But instead of, feeding guys drinks all day long and having them not sleep in a house as a way to get to know them, maybe shooting a couple-minute video is a little more efficient, but same idea. But, and don't underestimate the crowd's ability to understand jiu-jitsu. So I totally agree with you, sort of being told what move the guy's working on a Kimura, and look, if he can just get to here, we think we can submit him, or look, he's almost at a leg drag, could have 2 points. I get it. That stuff is very helpful, and hopefully for the people watching the broadcast, they got the benefit of that. But, what's the postmortem? We, with our KASAI senior team, I had, I think, 6 different of my friends that came speak to the, we had a conference call and just had them tell us what they liked and didn't like. And guys that never knew what a jiu-jitsu was were describing Renato Canuto's cartwheel pass. I just was amazed, and they said, they're now on the Instagram and they're seeing how that when they watched it 1,000 times, and in our tournament we had a great, I think what'll end up being the submission of the year by Celsinho. He had a devastating guillotine choke, and of Enrico Coco, and just talking about how cool that guillotine was. I guess the moral of the story is, I guess a guillotine and a cartwheel pass are not so esoteric after all. Maybe they're pretty universal things that most people just intuitively understand.
Yeah.
So I think we're giving our sport too much credit. Maybe some of it is just, there are all sorts of nuances that, a more informed watcher would appreciate. But at its basic level, it's two guys, trying to beat each other up, and I think people get that.
Do you think that the no gi idea is more watchable for the casual fan than a gi tournament?
Yep, I absolutely do. In our undercard, we'll have some gi matches. For feature fights, we'll have some gi matches, but our tournament's no gi by design. There's just too much. I mean, gi is incredibly technical. I love doing it, but I think it's more fun to do than to watch, unfortunately, as compared to no-gi.
Well, no-gi is fun also. But, yeah, I think there are some even when you watch gi, sometimes you'll miss, like, the grip. You couldn't see where their hand was. And really, in no-gi, if I see your arms over here, I know what your hand's basically doing. I don't have to notice that, okay, he's got does he have the pant leg, or does he have the lapel, or what's going on? Can't see that angle. There's a lot to watching both of them, but I do think that no gi, it'd be a little bit faster pace as well helps.
So I prefer no gi myself, just my own personal preference. But the decision for the tournament was really not just based on what I like to do, but was the most, but was really based on what we thought would have the broadest crowd appeal. And, John Q. Public may not relate as much to two guys wearing kimonos. And, like you said, it's hard to understand a lot of the nuances of how these grips work and what the guys are doing. Whereas no gi, I don't know, it seems a little more straightforward. Something that you're doing, I don't know, maybe you picked it up somewhere, but probably at work or off the mat, but you're constantly, it sounds like this one, you tested it with you invited some people that don't watch jiu-jitsu, don't know jiu-jitsu, and then you got their reactions and you got them all together and talked about it, and you're really looking to get some more feedback and learn about what happened from your point of view and making the best show that you possibly can. That's right. We did a lot. I mean, look, I have a very analytical background. We're approaching this as a business, first and foremost. And, the couple of simple facts about, jiu-jitsu competitions is the people that go and watch them are people that do jiu-jitsu. And in many cases, they're the people that train with one of the guys who may be, on the mat that day. So it's not a broad audience, and the only reason it's growing is because jiu-jitsu is growing. But really, the future of a promotion is the ability to reach beyond that, right? So yeah, how else do you do that other than taking regular Joes off the street and ultimately developing a rule set and a format that is most appealing to them. So that's what we're trying to do. Yeah, I mean, it's not by accident. I mean, I like to do things the right way. I don't want to look. It's great to be like Berkut, for example, the ACB or the Sheikh who I was referencing earlier. These are guys that love jiu-jitsu, have a lot of money, and put something together that they like. Well, I don't know in either case the details well enough, but what I wanted to avoid is just putting something together. Oh, Rich likes no gi, so let's have a no tournament. Rich likes points, doesn't like points. He likes tiebreakers. He doesn't like that. Let's just do it, because Rich likes that, or the KASAI team likes that. Instead, really the approach is, what do we think will be the most interesting? What will appeal to the broadest audience? And we debate this all day long. You didn't ask, but my partners in KASAI, our president is Hollis Gracie. Hopefully doesn't need much of an introduction. Hollis is, on a competitor side as far as his family history and everything else, plus being just a super great guy. But think of Hollis. He's steeped in traditional jiu-jitsu. Whereas something like EBI and so this sort of no-gi, sub-only world is it's branching in a different direction. So, where do we want to be in that continuum? I think we found something in between. And it wasn't by accident. It's through a lot of discussion and a lot of track testing. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, we had Hollis on the show. It's been a couple of years, but he was a lot of fun to talk to. And a good person to have on the same team. KASAI, what is that? That's not a word I'm familiar with. How'd you come up with the name? KASAI, yeah, you probably wouldn't. It's a Japanese word. It means it's a fire or conflict that rages out of control. A fire or conflict that rages out of control. So I thought that was a great way to describe an intense jiu-jitsu competition. Wow. Yeah, that's cool. And we use the fire symbol as, the fire is our sort of emblem. Everything we do in our broadcast incorporates fire in one way or the other. So it's got a really cool visual aspect to it. Being a firefighter myself, this is that's right. I always had that draw towards fire and the fascination with it. Yeah, you're trying to put out the fire. So. You're throwing gasoline on the matches, and we're throwing. Yeah, exactly. I love the logo. It's cool. It's like a bit of a flame, and then there's two guys
in it. Looks like they're doing a sweep, but really they're part of the flame as well. Urge everybody to go by.
Embracing the conflict. Yeah.
There you go.
Embracing the fire.
KASAIGrappling.com
really
is,
cool.
is where you go to find that. What do you have planned in the future for KASAI?
So we're in the process. We haven't announced it yet, but because we haven't finalized it. But we're going to announce multiple dates for this year. We want to get all of our dates out in advance so we can then go to work on filling in with the best grapplers in the world to as part of our card. But we'll probably do 3 pro events in 2018, and we'll probably do 3 amateur events in 2018, which is important because generally we do an amateur tournament. So far they've been local in New York. Let's say a month to 2 months before the pro event. And on one of the mats, we will have a tournament, a bracket for, and the winner of which will be the 8th man in the pro tournament. So our next pro tournament, we haven't announced this yet, is most likely to be at 185 pounds. And also we haven't announced, so in due time it'll be out there, but we've already, we have agreements with 3 or 4 killers in that weight class, which we think is going to be a great tournament. But, it's the chance to discover the undiscovered. There's some local guys, there's people that drive or fly in from elsewhere for the chance to be that 8th guy. And our amateur tournament gives somebody the opportunity to do that. Plus, it's an awesome amateur tournament, gi and probably no gi for this one. Just a great chance to participate in a well-run, tournament with a lot of visibility. So the amateur tournament, then so we'll do 3 amateurs and 3 pros. And stay tuned. All of our tournaments will feature. Well, each of our events, our pro events, will feature a tournament, 8-man tournament, 2 brackets of 4. So each guy will fight everybody in their bracket. So you get to see guys fight. You come to see a guy you love. You don't have to worry about him losing in the first round. You don't see him again. You get to see him fight 3 times at least. You'll see at least 2 super fights. And if you want to get there a little early, you'll see probably 7 or 8 or 9 undercard matches of some, awesome talent in the local community. So we've got a lot in store for 2018.
Well, that's going to be awesome. And did I catch right? You're planning on announcing kind of the year schedule all at once. We'll have plenty of time to figure out. We're just still working through logistics. At very least, we'll announce our next date, which will probably be April, for our next pro event and our amateur event. And hopefully either at that time or very shortly thereafter, we'll announce the other 2. Well, Rich, I want to congratulate you on the success of your first event. Can you think of anything that you're going to change or do differently, other than, I guess, the weight of the competitors, that we could look forward to seeing? I know you're a guy that does, you test things, you experiment with other ideas and options. Anything that is going to be different or changed from the first one?
Good question. Well, first of all, for anybody listening out there, I'd encourage you to go to the Flow Grappling site, and if you have any troubles, just we can help if you want to reach out somewhere. But they have I think you can retrieve the full broadcast and watch it from start to finish. So we'd love anybody's opinion. So what you like and don't like. By the way, it's like that old joke about how many whatever type of person, whoever you're making fun of, does it take to screw in a light bulb? The same goes for jiu-jitsu people. Ask 10 jiu-jitsu people about how what they liked and didn't like about a tournament. They'll give you 20 different opinions. One of those jokes. So we'll take it all under advisement. But I think generally the core of what we did is going to remain the same: the tournament plus the super fights. We have had dozens and dozens of hours of meetings with Flow Grappling, who does the broadcast, and our production partners on site on a lot of little things. A lot of them you probably won't even notice, but it'll just lead to a smoother flowing. I mean, look, we never did this before ever, and now we've produced a very successful show that has gotten a lot of great feedback. So our goal is just make it better. And I think, for example, the broadcast ran almost 4 hours. I think we can do the same amount of actual activity and do it in, about 45 minutes less, for example, just by cutting out unnecessary breaks and just things that we weren't good at yet, and just getting that down. We're going to do some of the graphics a little bit differently, and to the point you're making earlier about just explaining the sport maybe a little bit better and a little more concisely to people that are watching it, that maybe aren't jiu-jitsu experts, but just lots of little things. What won't change is the quality of the athletes. I mean, we had a tournament with 8 guys that were so evenly matched that a lot of the matches were ties, and I mean, I just thought it was super exciting. We also had Gordon Ryan and Yuri Samoys. We had Craig Jones and Murillo Santana in our feature fights. I mean, just expect that level of quality at all of our shows. And if we can deliver on what we're working on now, you'll see equally, if not better, quality in our upcoming shows as well.
That's awesome. What's the best place on social media for someone to go to keep up with KASAI and what's going on?
Well, I'm 56, so I'm not so good at social media, but I'm probably the wrong guy. But we have an Instagram, KASAI Grappling. You can follow us on Facebook. Flow Grappling, KASAI, amongst other things you can follow. Shouldn't be too hard. We have a Twitter account. God knows how to use that. Like I said, I'm the wrong guy to answer that, but we have a pretty active social media presence.
That's awesome, and it just makes it easier for people to get the news about what's happening next and anything to be excited about.
Yeah, well, we'll be announcing a date probably in the next week or so. So stay tuned, and what we want to be associated with, and I think it was always the UFC's goal, is like they didn't. UFC, I think, always was, didn't want to live with the volatility of, if Conor McGregor fights, they know a lot of people are going to watch. If George St. Pierre or whatever fights, a lot of people are going to watch. But if they don't have them fighting on one of the events, the viewership goes down. And what they tried to do is make their shows so good and so well produced that people would pay, the pay-per-view, whatever, $100, whatever it is, without even necessarily looking who's fighting, because they know it would be a great event, no matter what. And that's what we're trying to do. You can count on us to always have the best guys in the sport, but it's on us to create a format that just is compelling. And that's what we're trying to do. So we're trying to make it so it's not about, who's on an individual card, just to know that it'll always be a great card.
Yeah, that's a great way to do that, and by building that brand, people will know if someone on the card they don't know, they're there for a good reason, and you're going to learn something about somebody.
Yeah, so for example, we had on our last card, committed to memory here, but we had Gary Tonin, AJ Agazarm, Munchie, we had Enrico Coco, Celcinho Vinicius. I think people generally knew who they were, and hopefully were suitably impressed with the quality of that talent. But most said, who's this guy Canuto? Renato Canuto, we don't know him. He ended up winning the tournament. It wasn't an accident that he was there. And he kind of proved himself. He did the rest he did, it was on him. So, yeah, I mean, it's, our job is to deliver, 8 superstars and to make it so that, like, I don't know, I don't want to single anybody out, but there are tournaments out there that you kind of know the 1 or 2 guys that's going to win, or certainly, a lot of this is preordained because, there's a lot of, easier first round people and second round people to get through. We're trying to build a tournament that everybody is, anybody can be a winner. And I think that just makes it more interesting.
It definitely does, especially from the fans' point of view. It makes it, if you don't know who's going to win, go in and who's a heavy favorite, it's a lot more fun to watch.
Yep. And what more can I say than the guy that nobody heard of won our tournament? And by the way, the eighth guy, that Juni Ocasio, he won our tournament. He trains. Guys, he's awesome. But he won our tournament. He wouldn't have clearly gotten in the tournament had he not won this. He didn't have a big enough name. And Juni,
he won the amateur tournament. You're saying?
He won the amateur tournament,
and got in.
And Juni was a whisker away from making it to the finals. He tied all three of his matches against some three monsters, and didn't make it to the finals, but almost did. So I mean, this was his big day in the sun, and since fighting with us, he's gotten a whole bunch of offers to fight elsewhere. So he is now on the map, as is Canuto. So. Canuto, by the way, also happened to win the no-gi world, so I'm not taking credit for Renato Canuto. He's an incredibly skilled athlete. We're just proud to say that we had him first.
That's cool. It's a cool story behind the guy that won the amateur tournament. So heads up, guys that are wanting to get out there and put their name on the map. The amateur tournament is definitely an avenue to do that. You could. In 1 month, jump in a tournament.
Book your tickets to New York and see if you can. If you weigh 185 pounds, this next one could be for you.
Yep. If you could win, the matches there, and then win a couple more matches at the big show, you'll be one of the top in the world, and you'll have shown that. Yep. That's an amazing opportunity for all the grapplers that are getting close to that opportunity to step on the big stage. Rich, I've had a blast talking with you so much today.
Byron, thank you. For sure. And if anybody wants to learn anything more, I neglected to mention we also have a website, KASAIgrappling.com, KASAI grappling.com. And we have a whole media page, and we've produced a whole bunch of cool videos and other things, and lots more to come. So just browsing through our website is probably a great way to get to know us.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll keep in touch.
All right. Thanks again.
I want to thank Rich Byrne for hopping on the show with us. Really a cool opportunity. If you feel like you're ready to go pro and ready to take it to the next level, go compete in their amateur tournament, and you'll get into the big one. And I think it's a great opportunity just to have give everybody a chance. You may not be well known. If you've got the ability, go for it. And that's a cool concept that they have. I think that the 6-minute rounds is another idea that really encourages people to push the pace. Tournament style is a thing that Jiu-Jitsu has it over MMA. MMA tournaments don't really work that well. You end up having alternates win them, and it's just kind of oftentimes kind of a mess. But Jiu-Jitsu is great with the tournament style, and they're willing to have super fights as well. That's also cool. Oh, they're doing a lot of stuff there. Production value is very high. Look forward to the next one. Hopefully going to get him on again, maybe a couple of athletes, talk about the next one when it comes up. So thanks, Rich, for the time. It's fun learning about what you're up to and how it's going out there.
Oh, that was great, Byron. That was great. Hey, Gary.
Yes, sir.
Are you a full-time grappler?
A full-time crappler, maybe, as Byron tells me.
Well, I'm a part-time grappler.
I'm part-time.
Yeah, and so is the author of our article this week. We have an article from the Part-Time Grappler, and the article has to do with why jiu-jitsu is a perfect complement to any martial art. He's got 12 reasons why jiu-jitsu is a perfect complement to any martial art. And what I like about it, I like the way it starts, that jiu-jitsu can be a complement to any martial art. If you are already entrenched in karate or taekwondo or anything else and you get enjoyment out of that and benefit out of that, keep doing it and just add jiu-jitsu to it. Have you had a chance to read the article yet, Gary?
Well, my problem is I can't read. So.
The classic excuse, Gary.
Yeah.
He's thumbing through it right now.
Yeah. I was just looking at the pictures, But no, I thought the article's awesome. One thing, sometimes I hear in the jiu-jitsu community that, jiu-jitsu is the only martial art. I just hear people, everything else doesn't work or this and that. And, I do think all martial arts can help each other. I'm always keep an open mind to different, arts and stuff I can learn from them that I can carry over to my jiu-jitsu. So like jiu-jitsu is my main one, but I would, do other martial arts. Like me and Byron were actually talking about doing fencing one time, trying a fencing class, just for something different. And when I was thinking about doing that with Byron, I was like, I bet there's something I'll learn from it. And, here we go. Here's a guy who fell in love with karate, but, why jiu-jitsu is a perfect complement to any, martial art. And so I think it goes vice versa.
Yeah, that's a big one. And most people that I think do jiu-jitsu are just new to martial arts, but we do have a fair bit of crossover where people are doing something else and they come over. And it's important to help them kind of see what jiu-jitsu is, see how that would fit into what they're doing, if they want to keep doing that or if they're looking for a change. And sure, it's happy to blend with other things. And it's important for the teammate to accept, yeah, this person's still going to do taekwondo, karate, kickboxing, whatever they're doing twice a week, and they're going to come here twice a week and train that. That's awesome. Do what you like to do, and keep going with that. Looking down the list here, I'm going to skip down to the number 4, friendship. I think so often when you think of fitness, you think of going and working out and pushing yourself very hard. I think those fitness routines are difficult to maintain over the course of a lifetime because it's not social at all. And people have, gym partners and gym buddies. Hey, maybe, Gary and I will go lift weights, every day that ends in a Y or something like that. But in reality, once one of us quits, it's hard for them to keep going. The great thing about jiu-jitsu is you'll have a gym full of friends, within a short amount of time. And so regardless of if Gary's got a busted lip or if Joe's busted his ankle, there's still a bunch of other friends there for me that I'm going to be able to socialize with, learn good jiu-jitsu, get some really good rolls and have a good workout. But the nature of it promotes friends within the team. It should anyway. That's one thing as a coach you should be trying to develop is friendship amongst the team there. And that helps it become easier to go back to. It makes it take it to another level as far as not just self-defense, not just exercise, but a social activity as well. And that's ultimately a thing that will help people come in when they're having a tough time on the mat. When it feels like, okay, the last 6 months, I've gotten nowhere. But my friends are still here. I want to go see my buddies, and I want to get a good workout. And that's still something you could do, even if you feel like jiu-jitsu isn't really getting that much more in advancement. So the friendships in jiu-jitsu are oftentimes very deep. And I'm surprised that that's something that I've learned over the course of even this podcast is how important it is as a social activity for people to maintain longevity on the mats.
Absolutely. I think out of all 12 of these, I think 4 and 5 are probably the ones that hit closest to home for me. 5, he calls it sanctuary. I've never thought of it under that word before, but he says that it's impossible to be focused on everything you need to focus on at jiu-jitsu class while simultaneously worrying about the responsibilities of the outside world. And I can tell you there's times I go to class and I've got a lot on my mind when I go. I've got a lot going on in life. And I get out of class 2 hours later and I think, you know what? I didn't think about anything but jiu-jitsu for the last 2 hours. And it leaves me feeling mentally better off than when I went to class.
It's crazy. Byron, you picked 4. Joe, you said 4 and 5. And when I was looking at them, I was like 4, 5, and 6, were the big ones that came out for me. And 6, self-esteem. I know I've talked about this before, but, jiu-jitsu has really done wonders for my self-esteem. Jiu-jitsu is such a challenging sport. We get put in such uncomfortable positions, and we persevere. We figure out, how to get out of those spots, how to do it as efficiently and effectively as possible. And, it just feels so good. And I think about, especially this episode, we've had Rich Byrne on, and we've had, Bill Gates, 2 very successful people in the outside world, not just at jiu-jitsu. But I think about what I've learned from jiu-jitsu and the self-confidence I've gained from jiu-jitsu that I can take to that outside world and become more successful, whether it be as a husband, as a father, as I'm a banker, as a banker. It's just really helped me in everything I do. And what I really like is, there's a part of a sentence he puts in there, but jiu-jitsu is nothing but a sequence of overcoming challenges. And that's what the world is. That's what everything we do is. And jiu-jitsu, we problem solve, that was another one they talk about. But we solve these problems and we complete the task that looked like it was a very hard task to do. We complete it, and our self-esteem just skyrockets. So the crazy thing is, we all pointed out different things, and not one of us really talked about the self-defense or being able to take somebody down and choke them unconscious. We talked about the friendship, the sanctuary, and the self-esteem. So jiu-jitsu is just such a great art. It just every time I talk about it, I just get so happy. It's an incredible thing to do.
You know what I really like about number 6, Gary, is that it gets to the heart of what true self-esteem is about. Yes. Confronting challenges and overcoming them. It's not about getting an award every month. It's not about getting the best student of the month award. It's not about getting a new belt. It's about facing the challenges and overcoming them and being a better man because of it.
Definitely. He says mastering a challenging jiu-jitsu technique and performing it against a resisting partner feels like you're standing on top of the world. And it is. It's such a task to be able to do that. And your instructor taught you the steps to do it. You're doing it against a resisting opponent, and you see it works. It's just so much elation when it does work. And then when it doesn't work, we've talked about it before. We just go back and problem solve, figure out what we did wrong and what we need to do, and sooner or later it's going to work, and you're going to be on top of the world.
Yeah, there's a bunch more on here. These are a little bit of the highlights of the article. It's a fun website, parttimegrappler.blogspot.com. I think most people are part-time grapplers. Very few of us train full-time. So I think that this is an important concept with how to get jiu-jitsu to merge with the rest of your life, get the most out of jiu-jitsu without messing up off the mat life. I think that's a big concepts there that we all need to balance, because if you start messing up your off the mat life because of jiu-jitsu, you're really getting into some dangerous territory there where you might mess up your jiu-jitsu too, and then you get messed up both sides. I think, so I like the concept. I like the article. We'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely check it out. Hey, also check us out on social media. Really trying to grow our YouTube channel. Byron's got a lot of content on that YouTube channel, so definitely check it out. We're all over Facebook. Facebook is big. Definitely send us an email, bjjbrick@gmail.com. Send us a private message on Facebook. We're always available and answering everything you got, any questions you may have. And also check out the BjjBrick app. That way you'll never miss a show. And plus, you'll get some content that you don't get on the show. So a little extra bonus for anybody who downloads the app. So definitely check it out. We appreciate it.
And if you've enjoyed the show and you think a friend might like it, recommend it to them. That really means a lot to us. The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community is growing, but we rely on you to share this with your community there locally. You could either tell a friend just at class, you could tell them on social media by saying, hey, great episode, check this out, or liking the post. All that counts. It all helps, but just really talking about us, letting your buddies know that we exist. A good percentage of the population don't even know what podcasts are, and letting them know what it is, that it's free to listen to, that you can actually learn stuff about jiu-jitsu. Man, it's amazing that people, for me anyway, I'm pretty amazed. People drive around in vehicles listening to music all the time and don't ever listen to anything other than music. Man, you're missing out. Audiobooks, podcasts, there's a lot more you could be learning while you're driving. So tell your buddies about us. It really helps a lot. If you want to train with us, Gary and I are located in Wichita, Kansas. Get a hold of us, bjjbrick@gmail.com. Joe, tell them where they could find you if they want to get on the mat and get a slice of Joe.
I'm south of Houston. I'm 45 minutes away. You can come down and train with us at Brazilian Top Team Lake Jackson, or hit me up on social media. And if you're training in the Houston area and I happen to be home at that time, I'll come up there and train with you. I spend half my time in Louisiana, so if you're in the New Orleans area, I'm about an hour from there. Hit me up and come train with us at La Rose Martial Arts.
Outstanding. We do enjoy training with the audience members. Last week we did a Family Feud with Joe, and he did pretty good. I think his answers were better than what he got points-wise. But this week, Gary's on the hot seat.
It's getting hot in here, Byron.
It's getting hot. I don't know if we're going to total your points up or see who gets the most. Gary, are you ready for fast money?
Byron, I'm ready for easy money.
If you're new to the show and or new to the idea of what this is, basically there's a game show here in the U.S. where they ask people to take surveys. They ask then the contestants to answer these surveys, and the better your answer, the more points you get. Gary, name a word that has ski in it.
Skiing.
Real creative there, Gary. Name something kids take to the park.
Their dog.
Besides engines, name something that's under the hood of a car.
Besides engines, air cleaner.
You knew that. That's true, but it's not going to get you any points. Give me a word used to describe diamonds.
Flawless.
Name someone who works in a hospital.
Nurse.
Nice. Okay, nurse was your best answer by far. Skiing. Yeah.
That should be good.
Skiing was good.
In it.
It was worth 34 points. Solid work on
That's
that one.
good.
Yeah.
That's half as many points as I got right off the bat.
What else was in there, though?
Like skid, skin, skimp. Skin, Skittles.
Okay, I would have never got it.
Yeah, so,
okay.
yeah. Basically, you hit the only one that was any good. I thought you would get more points than that for that answer, but that's all they're giving you.
You guys
for.
made fun of my answer.
It was just so obvious.
Okay.
But you did good, Gary. I'm very proud of you on that one.
I thought it was bad when you made fun of it.
It was good. What do kids take to the park? You said dog. Cute answer, Gary. That was only worth 3. The number one answer was ball.
Okay.
Now I need to change the wording. Besides engines, name something besides the engine. I mean, it sounds weird.
I should have said battery, maybe.
Battery would have been the number one answer for 46 points.
Yeah.
You said
air cleaner.
Clean air filter. Okay, mark that one down for a 0. Name
Joe, I lost.
Name a word used to describe diamonds. The
I
number
was
one
going to
answer.
say carrot.
Carrot would have got you some points. 11 of them.
Okay.
Sparkling is the number one answer for 19. Flawless didn't show up. I'm sorry, Gary. But don't worry.
Man.
Much like this game, with your last answer of nurse, you'd have tied Joe anyway. Nurse was the number one answer for 64 points, showing one of the flaws in this game. Got 101
Hey, I like
points,
how you used
Gary.
flaw in there.
You did. Yeah, I did. 101 points, Gary. And one answer was worth more than all of Joe. It's just like some of these answers are worth a ton of points and some of them aren't worth anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that one was... I'm glad you said nurse, because nurse was almost double. It was more than double doctor.
I was about to say doctor. But I thought nurse would get a little more.
Yeah. Urologist.
Yeah. Proctologist.
Yep. A lot of good doctors out there. If you need one, you'll be glad you have it. Man, so that ends that segment of Family Feud. Well played, both you guys. It's kind of a 2-week competition.
Well, I think what we should do each week then is, total our points together and see if we get to 200, which we didn't this time, but we promise we'll do better next time.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
You know what I'm thinking, and I haven't done it yet. I need to get the people we interview to answer these questions. That would be a blast.
And then we play against them. Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Oh, that would be good.
Yeah.
So it'd be kind of a way to have one more fun with the guests.
It'd be great to say I got beat. It'd be cool to say I got beat by Richard Byrne.
Yeah, or you beat Richard Byrne or Kit Dale or something. Because you're sure not going to beat him on the mat.
Our only chance.
Oh, man. Taking cheap shots at him when they're not even on the line anymore. No, but so I think that would be a fun concept that probably we'll start implementing on the interviews in the future. If the guests are up for it. Of course, if a guest is...
Wouldn't it be crazy if our Family Feud becomes more popular than the one on TV?
That seems inconceivable to me, Kerry, but yes, that would be crazy.
Yeah, I don't know.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, with guys like Joe and myself, I think we can make it happen.
Yep. The host needs to... This guy is not answering, not really doing a good job here. I'm sorry, guys.
Yes. Steve Harvey is a lot better than you, Byron, but I got confidence in you.
It's a work in progress, but it's coming along.
Yep. Make sure you tune in next week. It's the end of the month show, so we don't have any cool guests. It's just going to be Joe, Byron, and I on the show. But we're going to talk about stop forgetting the jiu-jitsu you learned. It's crazy because I just had a training partner ask me if I had any tips for stuff that he's learned on, because he seems like he keeps forgetting them. So definitely, Alan, you want to tune in to next week's show, since I didn't give you any answers because I want to make sure you listen to this show. I'm trying to grow our audience by one person at a time.
One frustrated grappler that rolls with Gary at a time.
But, Alan, you do have to listen to this show. You can't miss it, especially since you split my lip in half, so you owe me.
This happens.
It happens.
It is a contact sport, Gary.
It is. Yep. That's why I train in a football helmet now.
Haven't escaped the guillotine yet.
That's what I was going to say. You'll never get out of the guillotine.
Imagine the crossface using the face mask. That'd be brutal.
Man, that would be tough.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll figure out a way, Gary.
I will.
And in the process, you'll stay sweaty, my friend.
And don't forget to shower.
Hey, guys, train hard, train smart, get better. See you next week.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.